The day my mother-in-law handed me a mop and said, "Since you live here for free, you might as well earn your keep," something inside me almost broke. I remember the way she said it. Calm, casual, like it was a fact everyone already agreed on, like I was some distant relative they were doing a favor for. My husband stood by the kitchen counter, staring at his phone. He didn't look up, he didn't correct her, and that was the moment I realized. They really believed I had nothing. They believed I needed them. They believed this was their house. The truth? I had bought it 6 months earlier, but they didn't know that, and I was waiting. When I first married Daniel, I thought I was marrying into a family. I imagined loud dinners, support, maybe even warmth. Instead, I walked into a house where I was silently measured from the first day. His mother, Carol, looked me up and down during our first dinner and said, "You don't look like someone who works in finance." I smiled politely. "I do." She gave a tight smile back. "Oh, well, good for you." That was the beginning. After Daniel lost his job a year into our marriage, things shifted fast. We had been living in a small apartment downtown. I was covering most of the bills already, but when he lost his income completely, Carol insisted we move into their family home to save money. "It'll only be temporary," Daniel said one night while packing boxes. "Mom just wants to help." Temporary turned into permanent faster than I expected. The house was big, old, paid off years ago by Daniel's father before he passed. Carol reminded me of that constantly. "Your father-in-law worked his whole life for this roof," she would say, especially when I rearranged something small like a chair. "We have traditions here." Traditions, I learned, meant I cooked, I cleaned, I did laundry, I hosted guests, while she supervised. At first, I didn't fight it. I told myself she was grieving her husband. I told myself Daniel was stressed about finding work. I told myself being patient was mature. But patience slowly turned into humiliation. One evening, Carol invited her church friends over without telling me. I came home from work to find 6 women in the living room and Carol saying, "Oh, good, you're back. We were just waiting for you to start dinner." I stood there, still in heels, laptop bag on my shoulder. She leaned closer and whispered, "Don't embarrass me." I cooked for 3 hours. Not one of those women knew I was the only person in that house with a stable income. Daniel sat with them, laughing. When I finally joined the table, exhausted, Carol smiled and said loudly, "She's learning. I'm teaching her to be a proper wife." I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I stayed quiet. That night in our bedroom, I asked Daniel, "Why didn't you say anything?" He sighed. "You know how she is. It's easier not to argue." Easier for who? Another week passed, then another. Carol began leaving handwritten chore lists on the fridge, my name at the top, tasks underneath. Sweep patio, clean guest bathroom, organize pantry. One Saturday morning, she walked into the kitchen when I was reviewing spreadsheets on my laptop. "Oh, good," she said. "You're not busy. The windows need washing." I closed my laptop slowly. "I am busy." She tilted her head. "With what?" "Work." She gave a tight smile back. "Honey, if that little office job paid enough, you wouldn't be under my roof." That was the second something inside me shifted. I stopped defending myself. I stopped explaining. I started watching. Daniel still hadn't found stable work. Interviews came and went, rejections piled up. His confidence shrank. And instead of facing that, he leaned harder into his mother's narrative. "We should be grateful," he told me once. "Not everyone gets this kind of support." Support. I was supporting all of them. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Carol invited extended family over. Cousins, an aunt I'd never met. There were at least 12 people at the table. Before we sat down, she clinked her glass. "I just want to say how proud I am of my son," she began. "Even during hard times, he remains strong. Family is what carries us." Everyone nodded. Then she added, smiling at me, "And we all do our part, don't we? Some more than others." A few people laughed softly. I felt every eye slide towards me. Something in my chest went very still. During dessert, Carol's sister leaned over and asked, "So, what exactly do you do, dear?" I answered calmly, "I'm a senior financial analyst." She blinked. "Oh, that sounds serious." Carol interrupted, "It's mostly computer stuff, flexible hours." Flexible. That word again. I excused myself from the table and walked upstairs. I didn't cry. I opened my email instead. There it was, the finalized property tax confirmation, paid in full, under my name. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. The next morning, I woke up early, earlier than usual. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, waited. Carol walked in around 7. "Oh, good," she said automatically. "I was going to ask if you—" "This house is legally mine." She stopped mid-sentence. "What?" I folded my hands calmly. "The mortgage, the title, the property taxes, they're under my name." She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "That's not possible." "It is." Daniel walked in then, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" I looked at him. "You should sit down." Silence filled the room. I explained everything. The debt, the refinancing, the transfer, the payments I'd been making quietly every month. Daniel's face drained of color. Carol's mouth opened and closed twice before words came out. "You tricked me," she whispered. "No," I said evenly. "I saved this house." Her voice rose. "You manipulated the paperwork. You signed it." She looked at Daniel. "Are you just going to let her talk to me like this?" Daniel looked at me instead, confused, hurt, embarrassed. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" I asked softly. He didn't answer. Carol stood up abruptly. "This is my husband's house." "It was," I corrected gently. "Now it's mine." The room felt different. Not louder, not dramatic, just different. For the first time, I wasn't standing under their roof. They were standing under mine. Carol didn't speak to me for 3 days. Daniel avoided me for 2. Then, on the 4th night, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. "Why did you wait?" he asked quietly. "Because I needed to know something," I said. "What?" "Whether you respected me." Silence. "I was drowning here, not financially, emotionally, and neither of you noticed." He swallowed hard. "I thought you were strong," he said. "I am," I replied. "That's why I stayed quiet." The next week, I made a decision. Not revenge, not eviction, structure. I drafted a simple agreement: contribution expectations, respect boundaries, clear division of responsibilities. We sat at the same kitchen table where I had once been handed a mop. "I'm not your maid," I said calmly. "I'm not a guest, and I'm not invisible." Carol's hands trembled slightly as she held the paper. "You would really throw us out?" she asked. "If it comes to that, yes," I said honestly. It wasn't a threat. It was clarity. Something shifted in her eyes then. Not love, not warmth, but awareness. The next month, things changed slowly. Carol started asking instead of ordering. Daniel began actively job searching again, contributing, cooking sometimes. One evening, Carol surprised me. "I didn't know," she said quietly while drying dishes beside me, "about the payments." I said, "You didn't ask." She nodded. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest she had ever come. Power doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like sitting calmly at your own table while everyone else realizes they misjudged you. Months later, when Daniel finally found steady work, he said something that stayed with me. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying." I looked at him. "I didn't realize how little you saw." We're still working through that. Respect, once broken, doesn't magically repair, but I no longer shrink in my own home. And Carol, she never handed me a mop again. The house feels different now, not because the walls changed, but because the balance did. They thought I was dependent. They thought I was lucky to be there. They thought I had nowhere else to go. They didn't know I had built the foundation beneath their feet. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been treated like you were small while you were quietly carrying everything, you understand this feeling. Have you ever been underestimated like this?
Tell me in the comments.